We have to look at it for what it is. It's organized crime on a very massive scale.
It involves not just the wildlife at stake, but the people, the economies, and whole regions of the world.
Many are surprised to learn that illegal wildlife trade is one of the largest criminal activities in the world. In fact, it ranks among the world's top illegal trades.
On the scale of illegal black markets, the usual sorts of things like drugs and human trafficking, wildlife sits at the top 5. The value of the black market for illegal wildlife is estimated to be between $7 and $10 billion annually.
The amount of money that is made by illegal wildlife trade is enormous. I mean, this is not one individual or a few individuals going around killing a few animals, as bad as that would be, and that would be bad. But it is wholesale slaughter of animals.
The people who finance wildlife trade and who are making the big money from it are some of the same people who are involved in the trade in drugs, guns, human trafficking.
Also, some of that money is finding its way into the hands of recognized Islamist terrorist organizations that's supporting insurgency.
These dangerous organized criminal elements are not just endangering wildlife and worldwide national and regional security. They are also directly threatening the lives of people in the regions in which they operate.
You have another type of a poacher, which is quite dangerous now. So they will come in armed, looking for a rhino specifically. They normally come in obviously they come in with rifles, your AKs.
The challenges rangers are facing these days in the field to combat poaching is immense. You're up against criminal gangs who are armed with high-powered rifles. They're armed with night vision scopes, which means they can effectively use the daytime and the nighttime. And the rangers are not fully equipped to their standards.
We're talking about automatic weapons. We're talking about vehicles on which heavy weapons are mounted. We're talking about rocket-propelled grenades. Basically, war-fighting equipment.
We are seeing poachers being former soldiers who are trained in actual combat. And this is not a skill normally imparted upon the rangers under ordinary conservation circumstances. So the challenges they are faced is very high.
So it's a problem that not only affects the species in the natural world, it threatens local communities, which in turn then threatens economies at local and national levels.
The kingpins of the wildlife trade feel confident they can continue this violent, destabilizing activity with impunity due to weakly enforced national and international regulations, lack of effective prosecutions, and low penalties. This makes wildlife crime a low-risk, yet high-profit crime.
There are laws on the books in a lot of places. They're not getting enforced well. In some places, the laws are not strong enough and they need to be improved. In some places, the laws are strong and countries are trying to enforce them, but the issue is not a high-level political priority, and so they're not getting the support they need politically within their countries to prosecute the crimes.
The traders, the illegal traders, the criminals, they know the loopholes within the law. They know how to circumvent the law to operate the way they're operating.
It's enormously destabilizing because these people bribe judges, they bribe border guards, they in some cases bribe rangers, in other cases they bribe villagers to let them camp out in these areas. They, in effect, take a slice of a country, a portion of a country, and make it ungovernable for the government of that country. They lose control over it. They lose control over their judiciary, lose control over their borders, lose control over their police system because they're bribed. Or if they're not bribed, they're intimidated. So it undermines the governance process in a lot of countries who are struggling themselves to govern, and now they have this additional destabilizing factor.
Wildlife crime and the threats and instability it brings is only escalating each year as these criminal activities continue unchecked. To stop this, every country needs to treat wildlife trafficking like the serious crime it is. And we need this to happen fast before the situation gets far worse. You can help us make that happen.
So when you look at elephants at the continental level, the big picture, we see alarming trends.
In Africa, all of our evidence is showing that in fact tens of thousands of elephants are being killed on an annual basis just for their ivory. That's unbelievable.
There's a situation in Cameroon that developed earlier this year in Bubanjira National Park that had about 400 to 500 elephants in it, and the Janjaweed militia came in, about 150 of them, and proceeded to wipe out about 300 elephants at least.
You know, just this week in Kenya they reported a seizure of 2 tons of elephant ivory. Now that would equate to something like maybe 250 elephants that were killed for their ivory for that one shipment. And we're seeing these shipments being seized, it seems to me, almost every other week.
In 2011, more large shipments of ivory left Africa than we've ever seen in history. Huge shipments, several tons each, showing up in the ports of Southeast Asia. The scale, the size of those shipments indicates that this is a highly organized illegal trade.
It's the same people doing this sort of crime as a smuggling, human smuggling, drug smuggling, guns.
We have to look at it for what it is. It's organized crime on a very massive scale, killing very large numbers of animals, and a number of forest rangers who are killed also. So it's another part of the crime problem.
The types of products that are made out of ivory tend to be works of art or carvings that are gifted or used for ornamental displays in homes.
They do make fantastically beautiful pieces, but what you have to see is open your eyes and see that this piece of art comes from a dead elephant. That ivory comes from a living animal that has suffered enormously to get that piece of artwork.
Some people, it's been clear, they don't even realize that elephants are killed for their ivory, that they think somehow these tusks drop off like antlers of a deer.
There is no way to obtain the ivory without killing the elephant. The ivory is a growing piece of the elephant's body. So in almost all cases, the elephant is shot by the poacher, and then as soon as they can reach the elephant, they hack out the tusks, usually using machetes, sometimes a chainsaw if they're more sophisticated, hack out as much of the ivory as they possibly can because it's all so extremely valuable. In a few cases, the elephant doesn't die immediately, but is badly injured, and then the elephant is just left to die from its wounds.
These are beautiful animals wildlife created by nature. They've been there for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years, and now they're being slaughtered for money, for ornaments. I would say that is a moral outrage if ever there were one.
So one of the key things that people can do if they want to protect elephants is don't contribute to the problem. If you're ever presented with an object that you think may be made of ivory, by all means don't buy that object.
Be aware of the products that are available in the marketplace that are illegal, even in this country, but also when you travel abroad to parts of Asia where you see illegal ivory, for example, on sale. Be sure that you are aware that you don't buy these products, and make sure your friends are aware.
We know people coming together can make a difference. You know, people talking to each other, people standing out shouting about something that's important can make a difference. So it can help us by joining our campaign. You can help us push through a number of initiatives that's going to make a difference for those animals on the ground.
Come to our website, be informed about the issues, take action where we ask you to take action. We're trying to get leaders to elevate this issue politically, to be able to mobilize the resources, the attention we need on this.
I get asked fairly frequently, why should I care? This isn't impacting us. Does it really matter if elephants go extinct? And it occurred to me that to some level, the creatures define us. How we take care of them that defines us as humans. Every other species doesn't stand a chance against us. And because we're sadly greedy as well, the other species are very likely to go into extinction if we don't care. We need to care. We need to have these creatures amongst us. We need to get better as a species.
There's nothing quite like seeing a tiger in the wild. The grandeur, the beauty is just awe-inspiring. When you think about that animal being reduced to a rug, for me it just galvanizes me to want to do more to protect that magnificent animal in the wild.
Tigers are now in terrible jeopardy. Populations have plummeted from 100,000 or so 100 years ago to no more than 3,200, maybe even less today.
Right across the whole range from Sumatra up to Siberia. We've had massive population crashes, and we're down to these critically low numbers.
The core populations are slowly getting wiped out. Like, for example, we had Suklafanta, which was the highest density of tigers recorded anywhere. Today we have 7 tigers left. We simply don't have enough resources on the ground at this point in time to keep them secure.
We're still losing tigers every day. 3 subspecies of tigers have already disappeared. We don't want that to happen to the remaining tiger subspecies.
By far the largest threat facing tigers is poaching. In some places they are shot, in others they're snared, in others they're poisoned, but the poaching really is rife across the whole range.
Once the tiger was poached, every part of the tiger is taken away by the poachers, and you can hardly find a trace.
Basically, for wildlife criminals, the tiger is worth more dead than alive, broken down into all its body parts, packaged, shipped and sold into different component commodities.
Almost every part of the tiger has a use in either traditional medicine or folk beliefs. I've met people who believe that the skin has magical properties. You can wrap it around a sick person, it'll heal them. Obviously there's the ornamental uses of skins. Tiger bone is believed to have medicinal properties. Even the whiskers in some cases are used, and the tiger meat is also eaten. So unfortunately, a lot of these old beliefs have now coupled up with new money, and that's a disastrous equation for tigers.
The drivers are definitely coming from numerous places. The magical issues around tigers is found in Sumatra. The pelt issue is primarily in Tibet. Tiger as an exotic meat is generally Vietnam. The tonic issue is primarily China. And the US is one of the largest consumers of wildlife products anywhere in the world. So there are always issues in the US.
It certainly is affecting the US. Americans import these things illegally. Americans go away and they buy things like skins of endangered animals. This is a problem that we Americans need to focus on.
What's challenging in this latest crisis is the scope and scale of the problem and the involvement of organized crime, which makes it a harder nut to crack.
We have to address it in the way it requires, which is taking very tough action, and not just the US, but working with other countries.
We've already seen some real success in getting attention at high levels of government. We're working closely with governments in Asia to help them better deploy enforcement resources and technologies to patrol the areas of most importance to tigers. And we're working with our own government to continue to support and provide resources to the field where tigers are most critically in need of protection. So there is hope that we can see the change we need, but we clearly need to do a whole lot more.
We need better or stronger enforcement. At the moment, it's a very low priority for governments. We need people to go out there and to really push and to really say this is an issue that's important. So if you join our campaign, you can help us by putting pressure where it's needed at the highest political levels.
But on top of that, every single individual can play a role in reducing demand. If you ever have a conversation with your friends or you ever hear of anybody interested in buying tiger products, have a very strong message to everyone you meet that buying tiger products is unacceptable.
We have a special responsibility to make sure that we are leading the world, showing people that there are ways to mobilize society, to care about endangered species, to take actions that will help promote their conservation, and equally as important, avoid those actions that lead to illegal poaching and trade. We owe it to our children and our grandchildren to leave them a world that has tigers in the wild, in secure populations.
If we lose the tiger in the wild, the world's going to be a lesser place.
To me, the definition of humanity is partly measured by how we treat our fellow species on the planet. We have the power and the resources to conserve tigers forever. The question is, do we have the will? And if we do not have that will, I really think we've lost part of our humanity.
I first came across rhino horn trade in 1995. I went along with the Metropolitan Police on the raid, and we went into this particular pharmacy. I went underneath the counter and pulled out a metal tin, opened the metal tin, and inside was a rhino horn sitting there in central London, where half of it had been shaved away for medicine. And it was really shocking to have this rhino horn in my hands that had been, not so long ago on the face of a rhino in Africa.
Rhinos are one of the most exploited species by poachers for their horns. Rhino horn is literally worth its weight in gold, making them extremely valuable to poachers who take great risks to go after rhinos and kill them for their horn.
One of the biggest crises areas we have right now is in the rhino poaching in South Africa. We have seen an explosion in poaching of rhinos in South Africa, 5,000% increase since 2007. It's unbelievable. We've never seen that kind of trend and massive change. And this is in a country that has had great success until recently with rhino conservation. So we have to be extremely concerned about other countries that are much less well equipped to deal with these problems.
A few years back, Zimbabwe lost a quarter of its rhino population within just a few short years. Kenya has lost a number of rhinos as well.
For Sumatran rhinos, we only really have about 4 locations where there's a hope of saving the species. And for Javan rhinos, we just have 1 site in Java where Javan rhinos actually survive. And there's none in captivity. And really, you can't get much more on the edge of extinction than that. Every single rhino is under threat from poaching at the moment.
What has emerged in recent years is a rumor, a myth in Vietnam, that rhino horn can be used to cure cancer. We've also heard rumors of rhino horn being used in things like curing hangovers as well. So as a result, we've seen demand for rhino horn in Vietnam skyrocket.
Reputable universities that study Asian medicine, some of which are tremendously effective, have never shown that rhino horn, which is just really finely compacted hair, has any medicinal value.
If anybody is out there curious about the effect of rhino horn, they can simply chew on their hair or their fingernails. It's exactly the same effect.
If anything, this is harmful to people's health because someone takes the rhino horn medicine instead of getting real treatment. Rhino horn is never that. It's nothing but a waste of money, but it's making a lot of people rich, and rhinos are dying all over Africa because of it.
I think people don't understand how many animals are killed and how savagely they're killed. I mean, it's just slaughter of the worst sort. I mean, rhino killed, its horns cut off. And brutality, there's no other way to describe it, just brutality.
I had a rhino horn trader who said, well, the rhino dies and someone picks up the horn, I'm not doing any harm. And it wasn't disingenuous. He really didn't understand that now rhinos have to have 24/7 protection and that they're being killed. And not only them, but even the rangers protecting them are being killed because of the demand for rhino horn.
This is such organized crime and such high value crime. It's the same people doing this sort of crime as a smuggling humans, smuggling drugs, smuggling guns. And that can lead to all sorts of direct violence.
So we just have this escalating demand, weak institutions, and countries need help if they're going to be able to hold the line and protect their wildlife.
In order to address this problem successfully, we need action at all levels. We need it globally with better coordination and commitments to law enforcement. We need political action with global leaders making this a serious crime. We need action on the ground with frontline enforcement brigades. We need action in consumer countries to reduce demand. We need regular people to help raise awareness.
What the average person can do is to make sure everybody they know, they interact with, knows that buying rhino horn, using rhino horn is just unacceptable. It doesn't matter which country you live in, it's still an issue, and everyone needs to know that this is socially unacceptable everywhere in the world.
What we need to do is have people understand that these things aren't a cure for cancer. These are things that need to belong on that rhino, and that if they're wiped out, it's going to make a massive mark on society. We are going to need to be held responsible for future generations. Why didn't we save the rhino? Why didn't we protect these species? And I think that we have to take a stand now. So we're asking people to join us in that stand, and we just hope that people watching this will actually do that with us.
The endangered species trade, unfortunately, is not just about the killing of various types of animals. It really is a war, and rangers are killed on a regular basis.
Game wardens, conservation officers are shot and killed far more often on a per capita basis than police officers. I got a first-hand sense of that when I went to train African rangers in CSI techniques, and there were 5 rangers, including this young woman who looked like my daughter, far too young to be carrying a gun. They said, oh no, she's tough, she's fine. But as we're going through the training, I said, so what about your safety? How are things going? They said, well, it's pretty dangerous. We lost 10 of us last year.
I can give you many stories about men that I know who have been killed in the line of duty. In Cameroon, in Lobeke National Park, a colleague, Achille Zemodo, was killed just last year. He had run into a group of poachers in the middle of the park. They had weapons, and the Cameroonian government wasn't allowing the wildlife guards to carry weapons into the forest. So they proceeded to beat Achille, strip him down, tie him to a tree, and shoot him numerous times before leaving him out in the forest to die.
There was an incident in the Okapi Faunal Reserve in Democratic Republic of Congo where armed militias went through the reserve. They shot 6 rangers and their families dead.
One time, rangers were gone for arresting poachers, and the poachers, they managed to gather other people, and they captured the rangers and beat almost to death and left. Their hand was broken, their nose were broken and beaten in several parts of their body. So it was so very horrible condition.
You look at certain areas like the Virungas, and they've lost in the last 10 years over 100 park rangers. My personal experience in Rwanda when I was doing anti-poaching patrols in the Virunga volcanoes, we lost a 1/3 of our about 40-member force at the time to aggressive activities from either militia members or poachers. It's everywhere.
C'est dangereux, mais qu'est-ce que vous voulez? On est obligé de faire avec, puisqu'on a de l'amour dans ce qu'on veut faire. Quand vous avez de l'amour dans ce que vous voulez faire, vous ne voyez plus ce qui est dangereux, vous prenez le risque. On prend le risque parce qu'on aime le métier. Ça va être très difficile, mais on fait avec parce que c'est un choix. On a prêté seulement pour ça.
The rangers, to me, are the true conservation heroes. They really are on the front line, and it's a front line that very few people really understand the hardships of being on. They leave their families for days, if not weeks, sometimes months on end, to go and live in very remote places, in very harsh conditions, often without electricity, without running water, without access to fresh food, without access to medical facilities. And they're doing that because they're protecting wildlife. Often they don't have the authority to carry a weapon, or maybe there's one weapon between a team of 5 people. But they're going in and trying to intercept and arrest poaching gangs, which can be very heavily armed.
Park rangers may have bolt-action Mausers left over from World War II, and they're fighting groups that may even have access to aircraft that can come in and take them under suppressing fire. We're talking about automatic weapons. We're talking about vehicles on which heavy weapons are mounted. We're talking about rocket-propelled grenades. Basically, war-fighting equipment that is beyond the purview of rangers in game parks. So it's no longer a fair fight.
They're by themselves, they're outgunned, they're outnumbered, and they're putting themselves between these deadly poachers and a rhino and an elephant, trying to keep it alive.
Unfortunately, lots of rangers across the world get very seriously injured or even killed every single year. And this is something that is not really well documented and known, and I think it's something that really needs to change.
We're in a crisis situation, and what the rangers need, of course, is continued financial support.
Rangers oftentimes are very poorly paid by the governments that they work for. They may not be given proper equipment. They may not, in some cases, even be able to afford good boots to allow them to walk on patrols. And that's where WWF plays such a key role, because the funding that we're able to provide can help supplement rangers' salaries, to give them good equipment like GPS units, boots, basic uniforms, even meals and first aid equipment.
We provide them with tents, we provide them with field rations. It's not a very expensive activity, in fact, and it's critical to what we do.
What people have to realize is that any contribution, no matter how small, can buy something extremely important to a ranger to help him do his job. Protecting the wildlife, where rangers form that front line of defense.